Good afternoon, and welcome to the October 15th meeting of the Glendale Housing Authority. May we have roll call, please?
Authority members: Friedman.
Here.
Mincy.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Krasian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chair Sinania.
Here. May we have the report, please?
The agenda for the October 8th, 2013 regular meeting of the Glendale Housing Authority was posted on Thursday, October 3rd, 2013 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
And what is next?
Approval of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
No objections. The minutes stand approved as submitted. What's next?
Next is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the Housing Authority may question or respond to a speaker, but there will be no debate or decision, and the matter may be referred to staff through the Executive Director for an investigation and report. There is one card.
Yes, we have one speaking card from Mr. Grant McKex. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that name.
Hi, my name is Grant Michaels.
I'm sorry, Mr. Michaels. Welcome.
I'm the president of the Montrose Verdugo City Spar Heights Neighborhood Association. I understand that the issue of 12 Oaks, which was referred for review from last week, will not be heard due to additional study. I did want to go ahead and read into the record some information from our association. We met last night, and a letter was delivered to the City Council this afternoon. Our concerns are the same as yours about 12 Oaks. We did want to discuss the possibility of looking into the Council's authority to confer historic preservation protections on a property without the property owners requesting that. That was a suggestion made by Jay Platt, or a discussion that was raised by City Planner Jay Platt at one of the community meetings as a possibility. We would like to request that the council look into that and consider those options. We will be back when the staff report comes back with information from the city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Michaels. Any comments from...
I would love to see an analysis of the property. The city has an analysis, so discuss that.
Mr. Garcia, can we add that to the analysis that is going to be provided to us?
We can certainly provide a preliminary discussion of what the process would be and the particular, how this may or may not satisfy, but we wouldn't have the full historic analysis, obviously, of the property. That would require council action.
And I think we're referring to the possibility of that.
We certainly can include that as far as what the process would be for that, to take such
I mean,
action.
even if staff can take some look and let us know there's some possibility of this, or no, this is not going to qualify as being historic, or if so, at what level it would be, because otherwise it's just going to, I think if we could have that sort of very preliminary opinion from Mr. Platt, that would help, I think, guide the discussion.
We'll talk to Mr. Agani about it.
Do we know at this point that without the owner requesting historical status, that the council can act and do that on its own?
Yes, the council has authority to do that by
take-
I fought that battle. That was
By-
when I lost last
by
year.
supermajority vote, yes.
All right, then.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Michaels. And what's next?
On the business agenda at 6A is Director of Community Development and Economic Development regarding housing developer identified in response to the YMCA request for proposals for development of YMCA-owned property facing Kenwood Street and adjacent to the YMCA facility at 140 North Louise Street. A1 is a motion authorizing execution of an exclusive negotiation agreement with the Glendale YMCA and Meta Housing Corporation.
Okay, yes. Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, sir. This is actually a very interesting and multifaceted story, really, that begins many, many years ago, but we'll just take it back about a year and a half ago, right about a year and a half to 2 years ago. The partners at YMCA, who we have spent considerable time and effort with over the last decade in looking strategically at their property along Wilson and Louise, and understanding what their constraints are on that property, on that site, and what their ultimate desire would be for that property as it contributes to the downtown specific plan, had presented to us about 2 years ago a proposal, a plan for an aggressive redevelopment of their site. At that time, the city had at its disposal home funds that it had to use. It was in a use it or lose it type of scenario where we evaluated that project along with other projects in the community. And as you will well recall, the council ultimately decided that we would expend those dollars in other corners of the community and not at this particular project at this particular time because in many ways the project just wasn't right. In short, the council and housing authority board had exhibited a tremendous amount of patience for wanting to get the right project that would contribute to the overall vitality of the downtown specific plan area. At the same time, a great deal of patience was exhibited by our partners at the YMCA because they realized that if we were to actually bring forward a project that would make sense to as many different constituencies, as many different priorities that we all share, then indeed we'd have to really think hard about what we ultimately wanted to achieve on that site. So if you recall, about 9 months ago, we did come back to council and say, here is a site, here is a concept. We would like to go forward with a request for proposal process to see what the private market would dictate happens on this site. And we have moved forward with that process, and here we are today before you with an exclusive negotiating agreement. And we would like to move forward in that ENA, understanding that there are many more discussions, many more questions that have to be handled and addressed. So, with that as a preamble, let me bring up our Housing Deputy Director, Peter Zovak, to introduce the topic more so than I guess I did. Sorry, Peter, if I stepped on your toes. But as I say, it's very rarely, I think, do we get a chance to look at a project from cradle to grave, and at this point we're cradle to toddler, I think, at this juncture. But it's interesting to show how the Council/Housing Authority Board involves itself with the making of policy and the making of a place. So.
Thank you. Peter Zovak, Deputy Director of Housing. Mr. Chair, members of the authority, as stated by the City Manager, Community Development staff is seeking Housing Authority authorization to enter into an exclusive negotiation agreement, an ENA, with both the Glendale YMCA and Meta Housing Corporation, a housing developer identified in response to the YMCA request for proposals, the RFP. Staff does have a PowerPoint presentation, actually two presentations we'd like to share with you, and we have a few speakers to present on this item as well. It's always been a challenge to follow the City Manager up on a report. He gives such a clear and concise summary of the project. I've always just wanted to come up and ask if there are just any questions and move forward. But in the interest of time, I understand it may be a concern. If I'll just take a cue from you all, if you want me to just kick it into, or anyone else to kick it in the presentation into double time, we'll do that and move it along. So just let us know. The plan is to provide, I will be providing some information and background about the RFP and its issuance. I will be joined by YMCA board member Steve Bullock at a certain point to talk for the YMCA. We'll be followed by Senior Housing Project Manager Mike Fortney, who will talk about the selection process and the project overview. Then the developer, Meta Housing Corporation, will make a presentation, and then we'll wrap it back up with Mr. Fortney to close it with a discussion on proposed next steps and moving forward. We also have members of our RFP team available here to answer any specific questions you might have about any part of the presentation. We can take those questions at some of the stopping points that I just mentioned or as they arise during the presentation. And I'll be referring to the slides that you've all been given a copy of just prior to the meeting beginning. Just as a matter of background, this slide here shows the YMCA entire property holding. It's this L shape highlighted in yellow here. It is all one holding, one parcel, recorded as one, and it's made up of a number of different buildings and uses on the site. It is bound the front off of Louise. It is to the north is Wilson, to the east is Kenwood, and this southern boundary here is actually the United States Main Post Office. It includes virtually this entire block with the exception of this building right here. This building is carved out, if you can see this yellow. This is privately owned, rental apartment project. So this is the entire Y property. Here's where you see the two, roughly three-story gym facility with the rooftop use as well. Here's what we are calling the pickup drop-off motor court area. There are some modular buildings here, a pool shed in this location. Here's the YMCA's 84-unit SRO housing facility. It really consists of both the SRO units. The YMCA has staff maintained at both the ground floor and the basement level. There is a gymnastics stadium located in this facility as well as a pool, a second pool. The YMCA has two pools, an Olympic-sized pool in their gym facility, and this smaller original pool when this development was built. The other uses consist of YMCA-owned property here. It consists of a parking lot, another parking lot in this area here, and then two residential buildings that the YMCA owns. This fourplex at 127, 129 North Kenwood, and this 22-plex at 117 North Kenwood. There's an alley that runs here. Its alley has been vacated, previously vacated, and this area from here to here, it's entirely been vacated to the YMCA at this location because this is another property owner. Half the space has been dedicated over to the Y, and the other half belongs to the adjacent property owner. For some time now, the YMCA has been considering the prospect of developing their property, as it currently is underutilized in some areas, and some of the operations require extensive staff management. The Y views the potential development as a means by which program income could be generated for them that they can then use as an investment back into their facilities, capital investment. And it would also translate into increase, and the hopes are that it would also translate into increased YMCA membership enrollment. The authorization to issue the RFP came in response to a previous affordable housing proposal, as indicated by the city manager, by a developer in the YMCA about 18 months ago. And as he stated, it was at a time that the Housing Authority was prioritizing some expiring affordable housing funds. It had a slate of affordable housing proposals in front of it. The YMCA proposal was one of them. At the time, both CD staff and the Housing Authority expressed some concerns with that specific YMCA proposal. In this aerial of the immediate area of the YMCA, the first concern had to do with the fact that the Housing Authority had already been successfully developing affordable low-income senior housing projects in the immediate area of the YMCA. The YMCA, you can see here, is highlighted again in yellow, the L shape. Roughly in this two-block area, the YMCA, or the Housing Authority has almost 400 units of affordable low-income senior housing developed. Just down the street, half a block, you have the Casa de la Paloma, about 167 units. At this location here, a block to the east, you have Harvard Jackson at 55. You have Park Paseo in the upper 90s. I believe that's 97 units of low-income senior housing. And then adjacent that, you have the 40-unit Otto Gruber housing project. So there was a little bit of concern about adding another project, and that proposal was for 80 units. Concern of overconcentration of affordable senior housing in one area. Another concern had to do with the location of the Y and the proposal to the downtown and to, more specifically, the arts and entertainment district for the city. This being Louise Wilson, the YMCA is located just 2 short blocks from Brand Boulevard, half a block up from Broadway, and immediately adjacent the recently rezoned Arts and Entertainment District, which is a 2-block district anchored to the north by the Alex Theater, to the south by the Central Library and the soon Museum of Neon Art. There was a concern in that, with the proposal, in that the vision for the A&E district included a combination, well, the zoning for it intended to encourage the clustering of theaters, music, comedy clubs, art galleries, and similar uses along those lines. The vision was to have the A&E district developed using both the city-sponsored A&E district zoning along with financial incentives, specifically redevelopment funding to help spearhead the uses there. Unfortunately, redevelopment was eliminated, so at the time the Housing Authority and City Council had to determine that without that real important financial incentive, it'd be very difficult to, beyond providing the zoning, to really influence the A&E development in this area until another source of funds was found, and looking at economic development to fill that gap. So any land use decision, either in the area or adjacent to the area, became that much more important. And that was the reason that the Housing Authority and City Council elected not to pursue this YMCA proposal, but felt strongly enough that that there were the makings for a proposal for this site after some type of a design study was done in joint process. Although not a concern, what the Housing Authority did have when they were considering that original Y proposal was a couple of successes in the area of affordable housing that did more than just provide affordable housing. At the time, you had the Dorn Gardens project, which I'm pleased to announce is now a APA award-winning Dorn Gardens project. A couple months ago, it was announced through APA. And then you have the proposed Veterans Village project here. These two projects demonstrated that, and they provided examples of how historic preservation, park development, and targeted services and programming for special need clients could be achieved when you had the right housing proposal, the right developer, and the right vision for the site. So those factors there were strong enough for the Housing Authority not to take an action on the original YMCA proposal. But as I said, what they did do is they did provide direction, and that direction back in May of 2012 was to work collaboratively with the YMCA to develop an RFP for their property. That the RFP was to serve as a tool and framework for the development of the site. What we did is an RFP team was created. It consisted of both YMCA and city members. I would like to acknowledge them. Some of them are in the audience here, and I'll read off their names. For about 14 months of dedicated hard work in bringing this project to you. On the YMCA side, the RFP team was represented by Steve Bullock, who's a board member, Georgia Syons and Ara Kafalian, who are also board members, and then the YMCA Executive Director, George Saikali. On the city side, we had Mike Fortney, Sharon Garrett with the Economic Development, Eric Krause, followed by Roger Kiesel, representing the Planning Division, specifically zoning, Alan Loomis, and then Jay Platt, also representing planning, but urban design. We had Annette Vartanian with arts and culture, and then myself. We were tasked with coming up with an RFP and generating proposals that recognized the synergy of downtown Glendale. We wanted developments that had a vision that was outlined in the DSP and the A&E district. We looked for and wanted to solicit proposals that would recognize the partnership opportunities that exist with the Y, and then provided quality housing in a creative environment with supportive services and programs. Eventually, the RFP was issued in February of 2013, and in terms of what was considered to be developable site, it's this area here of the Y. The YMCA gymnasium is proposed to be staying, as well as the SRO building here. So the motor court, this area here, the modular units and tool shed are proposed to be demolished, and then this area here, including the alley, the parking lots, and 2 apartment buildings were considered and offered to developers to be considered as the developable site area for the RFP. There were 3 development priorities outlined within the RFP, and they were development priorities of the YMCA, of the Housing Authority, and of the City of Glendale. And we'll start off with the development priorities of the YMCA, and then at this point I'll ask Steve Bullock to come up and touch on this slide and some of the elements of the Y.
Well, Scott is a tough act to follow, and Peter is no easier. First, I want to just thank the city and the Housing Authority for the resources that they've given the YMCA. Looking at this kind of development project, we've learned a lot, and it's a very complicated type of endeavor that we are hoping to enter into, and the city has been a great assistance to the Y. For the YMCA, we were really looking at maximizing the value of the property that we had. So in the RFP process, we had a few key goals. One was certainly to optimize the market value of any cash payment that we would receive from a developer. Two, increasing and improving the parking setup that we have for our facility. We currently have 108 spaces for basically a 55,000 square foot gymnasium, swimming pool, program area that operates a lot of our Y operations, in addition to what happens over in the SRO building as well. We have a lot of programming going on. Thirdly, we wanted to improve the vehicle drop-off area. We have a lot of traffic that comes in terms of dropping children off, picking children up, and we wanted to improve the way that our facility handles that kind of traffic. And then lastly, the RFP also had a request for developers and their partners to tell us about any kind of property management operation that they might provide or bring to us as part of this overall improvement of the Y campus. We're looking at this really to help improve the financial strength of the Y. We look at taking some of this money to make capital improvements to the facilities that we have, and also to improve the programming that we currently offer for the citizens and our entire service community. So that's my presentation. If you had any questions about the Y. Nope. Thank you.
There were development priorities identified in the RFP with regards to the Housing Authority, a desire to see housing in a proposal, whether it be market rate housing, a mix of market and affordable housing, or a 100% affordable housing project. The only caveat was that based upon previous discussions, the Housing Authority would not consider a 100% affordable senior housing project. If it was proposed as affordable housing, we asked developers to maximize leverage financing to reduce the Housing Authority investment. We did have some priorities outlined from the city side. One would be the urban design and vision for the property. We were looking for projects that would be designed in a way that maximized visibility, pedestrian connections, programming opportunities to intermix with the immediate surrounding downtown neighborhood. We were looking at proposals that stimulated and complemented some of the economic development efforts that were going on in and around the downtown, the whole 18-hour downtown. And then we were looking at projects that may complement the activities of the city with regards to arts and culture. We appeared before the Housing Authority again in February of 2013 seeking authorization to issue the RFP. We received that authorization. The RFP was subsequently issued through various tools. First off, the Public Information Office issued a press release, series of press releases. The RFP was posted on the city's website and cable channel. Some social media sites were used to make the RFP available to the community: Facebook, LinkedIn, and a social media site for architects, ArcNet, I believe is the title of it. We did make the RFP known to existing market and affordable housing developers with projects in Glendale. We marketed the RFP to the membership roles of Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing, the National Association of Housing Redevelopment Officials, and the California Redevelopment Association. We provided the RFP to developers that have previously expressed an interest to the Housing Authority through their statement of interest that they've generated, and then provided it to general inquiries. One interesting aspect that we were able to do, we were able to track the page views on the city website, and we nearly had 400 page views of the RFP, and we thought that was a significant accomplishment once it was issued. And then with that, I will turn it over to the Senior Housing Project Manager, Mike Fortney, to talk about the response.
Good afternoon, Housing Authority Board members. I'm Mike Fortney, your Senior Housing Project Manager. We had a total of 10 different developers submit proposals to us, a total of 12 different proposals. one developer submitted 3 different proposals. And quickly, in alphabetical order, it was Abode Communities, Bridge Housing, Community Development Partners, Ganji Development, Jamboree Housing, Link Housing, Meta Housing, Optimum Group, Rome Corporation, and UCP/ALA. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of those 10 developers. They put a lot of time, money, energy, probably some emotion into submitting those. So I really wanted to acknowledge them and the hard work they did. Okay, so a little bit of a breakdown of the submittals that we got. One proposal that was submitted to us was deemed outside the scope of the RFP. 8 were 100% affordable housing projects. All 8 of those were 9% tax credit projects. We also had 2 mixed income projects, and then we had 1 market rate, a student housing project. And the density ranged from anywhere from as low as 22 units to as many as 91 units, with the vast majority of them being between 70 and 80 units. The assistance requested from the Housing Authority also ranged from $0, that would be the market rate housing, as well as one of the affordable housing projects, up to $6.4 million. All of the proposals called for an element of art or creative environment. They all had different levels of programming and service providers. The RFP didn't specifically state that you had to have an art component in the project, but it did suggest that they at least look at that. So all the 10 developers did have an art component. The land payment to the YMCA ranged from anywhere from nothing to $5.5 million, and the parking for the YMCA ranged anywhere from 108 spaces all the way up to 140 spaces. The YMCA has 108 spaces now, so at a minimum they would have gotten a 1-per-1 parking on this development proposal. And they did kind of note that the 108 spaces they have now isn't really well controlled. So even if they only got 108 on the new development, because they would be controlled spaces that couldn't be used by the 22-unit complex of the 4, that they would probably even net, even on a 1-for-1 basis. So, but with all the different proposals, they would net up to 32 additional spaces. And I should mention that one of the developers called for retaining and restoring one of the 2 existing multifamily buildings, and a second iteration by the same developer called for its relocation, but to an undetermined location. You can see the site, and I'm guessing this. Oh, good. There's the 4-unit building, and then this 22-unit building. The developer proposed in one iteration that the 4-unit building be rehabbed, and then a 9-unit building be built to the north and a 9-unit building be built to the south. So that's your 22-unit low-density project. And then on the other iteration, that project would be relocated, that building would be. So that building was built in 1922 and then located to this site 4 years later in 1926. And off the top of my head, I can't tell you what year the 22-unit building was built. And I wanted to show the front facade of the 2 buildings. The one on the left is the 4-unit building that I was talking about, built in 1922 and then located in 1926 at the site. And then the other one is the 22-unit building on the right-hand side. Okay, so talking about evaluating the 12 proposals that we had, we looked at the overall vision of the developer, the design of the project, the project economics. And when I say project economics, it goes beyond just housing authority subsidy or subsidy per unit. It's the feasibility of the economics, the assumptions that are made there, and then the team, the project team, the architect, the developer, the service provider, everyone that's involved. So what we found after reviewing all of these proposals is that the housing authority, the city, and the YMCA, they all had their criteria that they were looking for, the goals that were outlined in the RFP. What we found was that there were 3 developers that met all of those criteria. And those 3 were Community Development Partners, Meta Housing, and UCP ALA. Staff's recommendation is Meta Housing, and the YMCA board, this was brought to them last month, I believe it was 3 weeks ago today, and the YMCA board has voted to go ahead, move forward with an exclusive negotiating agreement with Meta Housing. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about why we chose Meta Housing. There's a number of reasons. The reputation and history of developing affordable housing projects, the team that they have established now is a team that's been together and that has built projects similar to this successfully. Their track record of leveraging multiple funding sources and their ability to get the 9% tax credits, which is very, very competitive. And then their portfolio projects. They excel in design, in sustainability, in construction quality, management, operations. Really, in every facet of these developments, they excel. They're just excellent quality. And then, two, Meta they had a vision for the site that we felt, particularly in the interview, and I apologize, the three that I mentioned earlier, Community Development Partners, Meta Housing, and UCP ALA, because those three met all the criteria from the YMCA, the Housing Authority, and the city, those three were invited to give interviews to the RFP team and a few execs from the city. So they all did that. And it was a culmination of everything that was submitted in the RFP, and in addition, the interviews that we had with them. And in that interview, and really in the submittal as well, I think Meta they really showed the vision that they had for that site. A really dynamic, the synergy that it would create between, not only on the campus of the YMCA, but also in the DSP area and also the proximity to the Arts and Entertainment District. They're extremely responsive to the proposal. Their proposal was extremely responsive to the design criteria that was laid out in the RFP. And again, just the integration of the clear and concise design into the YMCA campus. I'm about to ask Meta Housing to come up and give you their presentation. But before I did that, I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about them and what they're proposing. So it's Meta Housing Corporation. The project name that they've got is Glendale Art Colony. Meta Housing is the developer. Studio 111 is the architect. The arts programming service provider is a group called Engage. Solari is the property management company. And the in-house, well, not in-house, the construction management is KKG. And I just want to specify, that is not the general contractor. That these guys would oversee the construction of the project, but they wouldn't be responsible for it. And then the project itself, again, it's a 100% affordable, 9% tax credit project, which means it's rental, family housing. It has 70 units, 14 one-bedroom, 34 two-bedroom, and 22 three-bedroom units. The one-bedrooms range from 610 square feet, or they're approximately 610 square feet, and up to 1,160 square feet for the three bedrooms. The building overall is 5 stories in height, and it provides 260 parking spaces. That's 125 to the Y, which is a net of 17 spaces, and then 135 for the project. The ratio is almost 2 to 1 as far as number of units and number of parking spaces. In addition to that, they're also providing almost 8,500 square feet of community space, including a 1,290 square foot art gallery. And then to talk about the project economics, the overall development cost is $31.3 million. That averages to $447,000 per unit. They are proposing a $5.5 million capitalized ground lease payment to the YMCA, of which $3.5 million would be paid up front. The other $2 million would be part of the residual receipts, so it would be paid out of cash flow in future years. Again, 125 spaces to the YMCA, a net of 17 over what they have now. And the proposal is $6.4 million from the Housing Authority. That's a starting point. We expect to get that down some. But it does translate to a $91,000 per unit subsidy. And I just wanted to mention, as an example, Gardens on Garfield was not too long ago approved. That was about $144,000 per unit. Doran Gardens, I believe, was $144,000, $141,000 per unit. And then more recently, the Veterans Village project, which we expect to break ground next month, that was about $120,000 a unit. So even though this project at $6.4 million was the highest of the proposals, it still represents a $91,000 per unit subsidy, which is a good, call it bang for your buck, if you will. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to ask Meta to come up, ask John to come up and give their presentation, and then I will come back and wrap it up.
Thank you very much. I'm John Husky. I'm president of Meta Housing Corporation. I'm going to hand off real quickly to Chris Maffris, our vice president, to go through the details of it. But first, I'd just like to go very briefly to tell you a little bit about us and why we're really happy to be part of the team that may develop this project. Meta Housing calls itself, we are a mission-driven, for-profit company that specializes in quality, timely implementation of high-concept and high-visionary projects. We know that as a mission statement, that's a high bar, and we're happy to say that over the last 20 years, we've been able to fill that. We've done lots and lots of breakthrough kinds of projects, mostly in most of them, which involve the inclusion of education and arts in the improvement of the lives of our residents, the neighborhood, the community. And we have lots and lots of anecdotal stories that will show how we really changed a community. One of the examples which I would like to mention is we have a senior arts colony next to the second high school in Burbank, and as part of certain programs we have where our residents have adopted members of that high school has gone from a graduation rate in the middle of the pack in the state to up in the top 6%, and we're very happy about that. The kinds of programs that we do depend to a great degree on the quality of the teamwork we do, both with the city, in this case with the YMCA, but especially with the architect, the property manager, and the program provider. And we're very, very happy that we have Studio 111 as the architect. You'll see a sample of what they're going to do in a second. Solari knows how to handle the difficult transition areas between what are the functions of a property management company and keeping the project alive and healthy economically, and what are the things that the program does, especially with the arts and incorporation of the community. And with us today is Maureen Kellen-Taylor, and she and her program at Engage have been fantastic. They're actually famous internationally for some of the programs. Our projects have been used in breakthrough studies at George Washington University, University of Southern California, and several other ones that demonstrate how the inclusion of the kinds of things we're doing, where we make spaces that encourage programs that encourage activity, and lots of interaction with the surrounding community, change both the lives of our residents and surrounding community. And as far as the specifics are concerned, I'll let Chris Maffris, who's our vice president, and I want to mention one thing about Chris, is that Chris is the person in our company that we turn to where we have projects that take highly intense interactions among lots and lots of groups that are coming from different places. And because of the interaction with the YMCA and the involvement of the city and the inclusion of the Arts District, this is one of those projects that deserves such special consideration. Chris?
Good afternoon, board members. First off, I just want to say we really appreciate the amount of time and effort, and it's been an incredible amount of work that the city staff and the YMCA put into crafting the RFP and laying forth a clear vision of what the city and the Y expected and wants this site to become. And I think Steve's already touched on, I guess, the benefits of our proposal to the Y. So I'll skip over and really just talk about, some of the things that we were trying to accomplish for the city of Glendale. We understand the importance of the Glendale Arts and Entertainment District and the growth of that as a priority for the city. And we really wanted to put together a project that we thought was going to inject some additional life into the Arts and Entertainment District, not only from putting population there and increasing the number of residents and number of patrons, but also from a participatory standpoint. I think if you have that influx of artists that we plan on having as part of the development, you're going to see participation in the form of performances, gallery exhibitions, launch events, art walks, film screenings, concerts, things that are really going to increase the visitor trade in the area. I think the second critical component to the arts-related colony is really bringing in a critical mass of creative thinkers to the area, people that are invested in the arts, people that care about growing kind of the arts district. And then, again, something that John touched on is really our partnership with Engage and their ability to connect with the community and the existing artists in the community and integrate that into the development and into the operations of the development. And lastly is we wanted to come up with a proposal that we thought was financially feasible, something that we could implement successfully, and we wanted to try and minimize the financial burden on the city and work with the limited amount of resources that the city has. In terms of just target population, again, it's artists, but it's a wide variety of artists. We're not just talking about visual artists. All of our projects, our existing arts colonies, are kind of a collaborative of different mediums, including film technicians, entertainers, fine artists, actors, designers, dancers, musicians, and on and on and on. So I think the unique thing about the structure as an affordable housing development is that it allows for an artist preference, meaning that there's an allowed occupancy restriction or preference that favors tenants who are involved in artistic or literary activities. So that allows us to really make sure that the development is an arts colony, as opposed to an artist loft where someone can just pay to be in it and not necessarily have an artist background.
I think one of the things that we had really valued was the fact that this particular group had experience in doing this very thing in other parts of the county and other regions around this particular project site. So it wasn't as though this was just an afterthought, but rather something that could be engineered and something that could be delivered with a great deal of predictability.
Thank you. Again, and just in terms of development experience, again, this would be our sixth. We have 4 arts-related developments in operation: one in Burbank, one in North Hollywood, one in Long Beach, and one in South Los Angeles, and another currently under construction in San Pedro. So we think collaboration with the stakeholders and with the city is essential to the success of these developments, and I think Maureen can touch on that a little bit later in the conversation. I'm going to invite up our architect, Michael Bond. He's going to talk about a little bit of the design of the project.
Thank you, Chris. So I'm going to share first the design experience from the team, and then we'll focus on the project itself in Glendale. Meta has done a number of these projects. This is the one in North Hollywood. It has actually a theater component, which you can see on the right-hand side in the upper image. On the lower image, you can see some of the art that's produced within these developments. This is the Burbank Senior Arts Colony, the first one. It actually has a screening room. It has, again, the arts component, and then an exterior view on the left side. Another project that has recently been completed is in Vermont Avenue, the apartments. It also has an arts component, which you can see here. And then this is the project that we've been working with Meta on in Long Beach. And the community really wanted a development that looked like a market rate project that fit into the community, and they've been very pleased with the outcome. This being the exterior with 5 floors of housing above. And then the program that Meta provides to its users are all on the ground floor, which activate the street. Behind those uses are parking, but you would never see that as a pedestrian along the street itself. The residents are very pleased. There's 200 units. They are filled. The folks there feel like it's a very youthful, modern, warm, contemporary place to live and to practice in the arts. it does have a very supportive system, and Maureen will speak more about it, but there's opportunities to learn about the arts, to actually produce the art, and then display the art, which you can see in the bottom left corner. There's a number of galleries, as well as just in the corridors themselves. We've set it up in such a manner that art can be shared with the community members. Another project we've worked with Meta on is a 39-unit development, and the idea was to create a beach feel to it. So there's this lifeguard tower image on the right side, and then these cement boards that are randomly painted to look like weathered wood, but they're much more durable in terms of maintenance and in the long term, just durability. And then again, on the ground floor, there's parking behind it, but from the street side, you would only experience the amenity spaces and the lobby space itself, so you would not see the parking. And the reason I raise these things is that we're taking similar approaches to the project here in Glendale. We are working, the project for Glendale will be LEED Gold. We are working on another project in Monterey that is using passive house standards, and we're looking at only using 10% of the amount of energy that a typical project uses. Our studio does have a landscape component to it. We intend to incorporate their services into this development as well, and these are some examples of their projects. The other thing that's very unique about us is that we know the YMCA's mission. I'm a member in the Long Beach YMCA. We're working on 2 facilities for them. This is the Lakewood Y facility, which is going to be a flagship model for the Long Beach Metro Board. And then we're working on another one in Long Beach known as the Los Altos branch, which is a smaller branch, but also a reskinning and an additional 10,000 square feet of programmable area. We recently completed the Ronald McDonald House. Again, having architectural and landscape services together creates a synergy. The outdoor spaces are not just for plants, but they become outdoor rooms that are conveniently linked to the spaces that are on the inside, as you can see in these images. And then talking about the Glendale Y itself, we came up with 12 criteria that we thought was really important for this project. And every time we have a challenging question or decision to make, we're going to go back to these 12 criteria to see which solution best deals with those issues. And really our goal is to support the arts and integrate and complement with the YMCA campus. That's our overall goal for this development. I'm not going to go into the program. You've heard that through the city. But this diagram is really interesting. This is one of our first drawings, which illustrates the campus. We have Louise here, Wilson here, the existing building here, the gym, and then the SRO facility here. This is the motor court that Peter had mentioned, and then this is the surface parking lot with the 2 residential buildings. And what we wanted to do is weave this development into the community. The Maryland is right over here. There's a paseo that cuts through. We're hoping in the future, though we don't own this property, that paseo will continue to Louise. And then this motor court we'd like to transform into a beautiful, lush garden court that still has cars in it, but also has a pedestrian link not only to the Y, but to an iconic building at the end of this parking court, which we see on the ground floor having a gallery, and then on the upper floors where the artists would be working. So what we want to do is take this court and put 3 sides to it that really activate this space, and then hopefully in the long term link to the Arts and Entertainment District. We also want to take the alleys right now and transform them into beautiful passages or paseos, one being the north-south one with this iconic building terminating on that walk, as well as another paseo that would link to Kenwood itself. And then the massing of the building would be primarily on Kenwood. That's where most of the residential would be. And the character of the Y would not be in terms of massing, overwhelmed by housing itself. This is a site plan. Again, you can see the garden court here. There is parking here, but from the street view, it's all lined with either loft units, lobbies, or gallery spaces, again, to activate those street edges and not create dead zones. This is subterranean parking. We do have 1 level down. This is to house the residential parking. The parking at grade and the parking 1 level up would be the 125 stalls for the YMCA folks. Again, you can see Everything is lined on the street edge. And then as we go upward, we have the podium level. We envision having almost like an arts garden here where artists can create their work and display it in the garden. We see the units at this podium level having large patios that are perhaps 5 feet by 13 feet where art can be made in the podium area itself. There could be large roll-up doors from the units so that artists can bring the inside into the outside and vice versa. And then as you move up into the building, you'll see that the massing steps back from the Y, which is over here, to respect the massing that's there. We do have an aerial view looking southeast. Again, Louise is here, and then we have Wilson here. The post office is here. This is the garden court we were referring to. You can see the height of the building is pushed towards Kenmore, not to overwhelm these buildings here, which are very unique and representative of different periods of time. You can see the iconic building here, which creates that third edge to this parking court. And then this is another view looking northwest. Again, Wilson now is at the top. Louise is here. You can see that even though there is height along here, we've broken it up into a tower element, another element here, and then an element that projects out, so that the scale of these three pieces are similar to the scale of the pieces across the street. We didn't want this project to be a giant box that overwhelmed the neighborhood. And then in terms of the elevations, we're looking at plaster, a lot of metal, glass, some fun paint colors, some cementitious siding, which I'd shown you on some of the projects that we've used in Long Beach. And then the elevation down here is this iconic building with a lot of glass and that third face to the courtyard. In terms of landscaping, it will be lushly landscaped. I won't get into the details here, but these are some imagery that we thought would help reflect what that courtyard could look like. Very lush, but very drought-tolerant materials, and very colorful and vibrant. And so just two more images. This is actually looking on Kenwood, looking northward. You can see the mass of the building here with the housing. On the ground floor, because the post office is just south of us, we wanted to have a more commercial look at the bottom half of the development. So we'll have a lobby here that will serve as another gallery space for artists. We do envision a computer lab up above here, the leasing office here, and then we see loft-like units here where folks can, again, create art. There'll be patios down at the ground level that provides a little bit of separation for the residents, but again, there's that art component that's right on the street edge. And then lastly, this is on Louise. Maryland is behind you, and this is the existing building. The SRO facility is right off of the edge of this slide. This is that iconic building we were talking about earlier with the ground floor gallery that can be used for the Y or with Meta, but again, playing up the artistic component of this development. And then the creative labs, where the art is actually produced, is up above here. So we think this will be a very unique piece to finish off this facility. And then the housing itself is set back dramatically. We think this court could have art pieces in it, like an art garden. We think there's an opportunity for closing off part of the loft if the Y chooses to have events here, and really use this as a flexible court for events or for parking or whatever needs arise for the Y. And then we do see some this trellis element that would link folks coming across to, instead of walking into the parking lot, actually walk under this trellis element to the gallery itself. And with that, I'd like to introduce Maureen Keller-Taylor. She is with Engage, and she'll talk a little bit more about the programming aspect of the development. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Maureen Cullen-Taylor. I'm going to keep it really brief in case you don't understand what I'm saying because of my funny accent. We actually have been working with Meta on all of the arts-themed buildings. It's very exciting. I'm responsible for the programming, and my experience as an artist and a working mother has been tremendously helpful. Part of our success is due to our collaboration. We have partners already in Glendale for some of our other projects, Glendale Community College, a Tanyan Art Studio. We really look forward to working with the Y to complement their programming. And I'd like to compliment you all on considering this really innovative project. I think that it will embody your vision for the Arts and Entertainment District, and we will do our very best to make it come true. Please ask me any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the presentation over? Okay.
We can toggle through to the previous presentation.
Action request of the Housing Authority is for consideration of the E&A exclusive negotiation agreement. As you can tell by this detailed presentation from Meta, we have arrived essentially at a stage 1 review, but at this point we take the next step, or we're hoping to take the next step, to refine some of the descriptions of could be, might be, to will be, shall be, in terms of what some of the design features will ultimately manifest as. So you see, in terms of next steps, we do have to refine the scope and design of the proposal. We have to finalize the notion of affordability. Is it 100% affordable? Is it possible to incorporate mixed income? The Housing Authority a couple weeks ago received a presentation about what affordability truly means and what levels of affordability and how does that interplay with the financing of the project. Additionally, we'll be looking at possibly incorporating other surrounding historic properties. As we had noted earlier, the SRO Hotel that is occupied or that is owned by the YMCA, that is definitely historic, something that we are very proud of in terms of its architecture, and the population it serves in terms of meeting the needs of the community is important, but also just as important historically is the U.S. Post Office to the south that has been quite a subject of some angst in the community in terms of preservation, maintaining some opportunity for public involvement. We'll also be looking at completing the focused EIR and bringing that to you if Council does opt to move forward, because the next step would be a Phase 2 design review. We would be looking at the authority housing subsidy levels. We'd be looking at and refining the YMCA land lease payment, and also the timeline for development, as well as identifying all of the various entitlement steps that would have to go into actually bringing this project to fruition. There's a reason why joint ventures are the stuff of urban legend. They really don't occur very often. It's hard enough when you have a public entity and a private developer, add in a nonprofit organization, and by all accounts, these projects very often just fall by the wayside. Here we have all the ingredients to actually bring this to you with a committed and dedicated group of folks. In terms of the timelines going forward, we would like to get E&A authorization today, and presuming that those negotiations, those exclusive negotiations are fruitful, we would come back at the end of the winter in February with the Stage 2 design review and the affordable housing agreement. March is the deadline for the tax credit application, presuming we end up going there. The tax credit award would occur in June, and if all that happens, we could start construction about this time next year. Again, very complex project, but something that I think embodies the degree of the standards that the Housing Authority has put forth and the degree of patience that you've shown in getting to this point. You wanted the right project. You directed staff to pursue this process. This process has yielded what I think is a very comprehensive proposed project. So with that, the entire design team, the YMCA folks, and certainly our staff are available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Cho.
We're closing, and then the focused EIR mentioned by the city manager has to do with the concern brought up by the Glendale Historical Society with regards to the proposed demolition of those two buildings that were discussed in our presentation today. We plan to run the focused EIR for that component concurrently with the ENA. So by the time we do come back with an AHA or proposed AHA, if we do come back, that issue would have been settled by then.
Thank you, Mr. Zovak. We have one speaker on this. Why don't we take the speaker, then we can ask all the questions there are.
There's no more presentation? That's it?
I was told that was it.
That's the longest presentation we've ever had.
That's right.
Staff's presentation was 45 minutes long.
That's right.
Kathy Jerka, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak briefly on this project. My name is Kathy Yurka, and I'm here on behalf of the Glendale Historical Society. I wanted to begin by saying how much the Historical Society values the YMCA and the good works it does for our community. We enthusiastically endorse the overall project goals, and moreover, we understand that the financial well-being and long-term stability are really the paramount concerns here for the Y. The Historical Society also, though, wants to express its disappointment that the RFP for this project did not invite developers even to consider incorporating one or both of the existing apartment buildings into the design plans. And as you saw, the selected proposal does not, in fact, include them. The general plan of an arts project, an arts campus on the site seemed to us to offer a real opportunity to get developers to think creatively about adapting and reusing those buildings as part of the development. It's especially disappointing for us as the city's own downtown-specific plan identifies both apartment buildings as potentially eligible for listing on the Glendale Register. I want to conclude by saying, however, that we are very pleased that the staff report recommends a focused environmental impact report, and we looked forward to a cultural resources assessment as part of that. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Ms. Yurka. Shall we start? Mr. Quintero?
Okay, how about first? Well, I think it's been obvious for a long time that I'm very concerned about what would go in this space because it is so close to our arts and entertainment district, and specifically we are trying to do an 18-hour downtown, and we're encouraging housing that will bring a younger demographics or any kind of demographics. One of my first concerns is the fact that there's 22 three-bedrooms and I think it's 34 two-bedrooms. So that means to me that obviously there'll be families going into this proposed project. There are basically no parks in this neighborhood. The other projects that we're building, younger demographics, I doubt there'll be many children. In this particular, the way it's configured, there'll absolutely be families involved. And so, one, there are very few parks in this part of the city, but even more important is the only elementary school is particularly impacted. It's over in that direction. So that's something that I think the developer and the Y has to work on in terms of this many three bedrooms. Then my question, and this can be answered whenever, my question is what will happen to the tenants in these apartments? I have a feeling that they've been there for many years, and so what are we going to offer those tenants?
Should we have Mr. Zovak answer that question?
You can, yeah, go ahead.
Because of the city's involvement or housing authority's involvement in the proposal, they'd be considered and evaluated to see if they'd be eligible for relocation benefits, either under the state guidelines or, depending upon our source of funds, federal guidelines.
Okay. Then I'm also curious, well, before I ask that question, let me also say I'm very pleased with the actual layout. I think it's a beautiful building, works well. I like all of the, I like what the architect has done. But am I correct in assuming that all of the traffic going in and out of the apartments, as well as parking for the Y, will be going off of Louise and through that courtyard? Or are there two entrances?
Your second assumption is correct.
Okay.
There are two entrances, one off of Kenmore, which we would envision would be more
For
for
the
the
apartment,
residences,
yeah.
and then the one off of Louise would be for the
For
Y
the Y.
users.
Okay, great. And then I assume the 100% market rate didn't work because it didn't work for the Y. I assume there was no money. People are nodding their heads, so there was no money in it for the Y. All right. So overall, I guess the best way to put it is I'm not a big fan of what we're doing here this afternoon. I am a big fan of the why, and I think that anything we do to strengthen that organization makes sense. It's been here for a long, long time. The SRO alone throughout the years has done a wonderful job. The only real location in Glendale providing affordable housing for single people, in this case single males. But I don't know. The idea of kind of bringing families into this environment to me just doesn't work. There's other locations in the city. We have a big parcel of land off of Glen Oaks that I think might be more appropriate there. Proximity to parks, schools, etc. For this location isn't quite appropriate the way I see it.
It's probably worth noting, though, that the ENA would give us time to work out all of the discussion, all of the concerns brought up by Housing Authority members.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Friedman, please.
Comments, not in a whole lot of, not in a very particular order, but I do know that this project is very important to the YMCA in terms of their viability and their health, and I take that very seriously. I want to thank their board and their executive director for taking our concerns last time around seriously and coming back with new proposals. I know that that was a difficult thing, that you wanted to move quickly, and I really do appreciate the extra work you put in, and I do think you're ending up with a much better project, a far superior project than the last time around. First, in terms of the park issue, I do think we should look into that with families moving in, although we do have Central Park about 2 blocks away, and that's a pretty decent-sized park. I don't remember if there's playground equipment or not, but there certainly could be playground equipment there. And it's a decent-sized park compared to a lot of parks that we have in the city. So let's not forget that. Something I am very interested in the idea of artist housing, but in my mind, I would like to make sure that that is expanded to include the creative workforce that is such an integral part of the economy here. So that besides just fine artists, I really want to make sure that this is also something that's extended to people who work in the artistic communities, such as makeup artists in the entertainment industry, set designers. All of these people have really had a difficult time over the past several years with the entertainment industry losing so much production in Los Angeles. And now a lot of those people I know would fit into the affordable guidelines. And we have a lot of them in this area. And these are people who not only bring an artistic vision, but who feed into our local economy in a very important way. So you can have not only an artistic colony, but also workforce housing using the same population. So I would like to see that definition include creative industry workforce housing because, fine artists are great, but you're filling a large building here. And that's a need that I know that we have in this community, and I've been addressed by members of that community saying that it's very hard for them to find housing in this area, and they're working in this area. I'm glad to hear that your other projects, at least the one in Long Beach, doesn't look like affordable housing. I will not pass something that looks like affordable housing. To me, it has to look like market rate housing. And not only that, since we are near the arts and entertainment industry and you're trying to create a colony here, I would hope that you really do push the envelope in terms of making this iconic and funky and creative. And you're doing that. So I'm glad to see that. I don't think it should look like any other apartment building in the neighborhood. I think it needs to look different. We've had requests in the past for a community gallery that can be used by local artist groups in Glendale, so I would love to see you explore that possibility with your gallery so that it's something that has a schedule that can be used by the Glendale Arts Guild, by other groups that are in the community who keep asking us for a community gallery. This could be the opportunity to provide that gallery. The small parking lot, that's the driveway going into the larger parking lot, that's a parking lot, not just a driveway, correct? Or is it a driveway? Just a driveway. Is it a handicap parking lot, or is it just open to anybody?
They'll have the required number of spaces for it.
Okay, I'm just thinking that you have a very small number of spaces in that lot, and you're trying to get people into the larger lot, that you may want to put your handicap there just so that you don't have people hanging out, waiting for a spot to open because they don't want to walk an extra 50 feet to go to their workout, which is a little ironic. Oh, and the other thing about families there and parks is that there is this very large YMCA complex next door. So for people that have kids, I mean, even better than a park to have giant swimming pools and classes all day, athletic classes all day long and a gym. to me, that's just as good, if not better, than having a park with a playground next to you. So I'm really not so concerned about that with families. I think, for me, when my daughter's 5 or 6, I would love to live next to a YMCA and let her go to classes all day. I think that's going to be a great draw for families and a great amenity and a very unique amenity to families. I would like to hear about the historic eligibility of those apartment buildings. I have no opinion. I don't know anything about them, whether they are or are not historic, but I am curious to see the EIR, and I think we do need to evaluate that. And, the developer should keep that in mind. But I'll just tell you that this is, I think, one of the nicer projects we've seen. I really love the idea of workforce housing for the creative community. We don't have anything like that in Glendale. We haven't developed anything like that. I think it's very needed. The design of the building, I think, looks very, very nice. I think that it's not high density. It's really very appropriate for the area. I don't think it'll overwhelm the area. I do think that for families, being attached to a YMCA is going to be pretty incredible. So I am supportive of moving on to the next step. And thanks again for being patient with the city and working through our concerns. I think at the end of the day, I really believe that you have a very exciting project here.
Mr. Najarian?
I'll go ahead. Yes, this is an important project for the YMCA, so I do support it. The issue on the recreation afforded by the YMCA is a question because unless they're going to be getting subsidized memberships, YMCAs are generally significant cost items. So George is nodding that they'll get some. The other thing is who's going to live here, and I want to make sure when I supported artists' colonies, I'm thinking fine arts, I'm thinking painters, musicians. I'm not thinking of a makeup artist or an assistant bookkeeper at Warner Brothers who's not making enough money. So that's perhaps a subject of a discussion for a different day. But when we call it the Arts and Entertainment District, I was a little bit hesitant to earmark these units for artists, but I really don't want to start expanding the definition of artist because the point is to have folks that are able to contribute to a gallery that maybe provide some classes and display their works, whether it's pottery, painting, sculpture, music, and all that. Not so much workforce, and workforce is a broad range of income levels and job descriptions, but at the appropriate time, I would very much insist that it remain a very narrow definition of artists. And how did we get to artists anyway? I mean, refresh my memory. Was it just because we called this the Art and Entertainment District?
We're trying to find some synergy with the downtown. If you're going to bring residents into a very vibrant 18-hour downtown, the idea of having folks who would appreciate it and maybe not complain about it because that is part of their interest, it would be greater compatibility and synergy with that clientele.
So I guess my other question is, does the composition of the units, a 3-bedroom unit, is that conducive to attracting artists?
That's the submittal that we received from Meta, but again, the idea of the ENA is to go through and refine all of those particular issues because this is their first opportunity to hear from the Housing Authority Board, and if it makes more sense for that model to change the unit mix, for example, we can bring that back. In addition, answer some of the other questions that we've heard, divergent viewpoints in the affordable housing agreement that would accompany the deal.
Okay, so this is not a stage one, even though we've gone to some depth in the description of the project and the design. Stage one will come at a later date.
Well, I mean, we do have enough for stage one, but really the meat and potatoes is the stage two with respect to finalizing unit count, unit type, some of those details, and of course the focus DIR.
All right. Well, as I said, I'm generally in support. I'll be looking to see how the ENA turns out.
Well, I know a lot of work went into this. I've been interviewed by the YMCA staff. I've talked with our staff a couple times, reviewed, asked questions. I'm familiar with that site because I used to swim in the swimming pool in the basement of the SRO building back in the 1940s. And I used to go to the post office in the 1940s with my father when he was delivering packages out in the back. So I'm pretty familiar with this area. I consider myself an artist, though I haven't drawn for 40, 50 years. But when I heard about this art, I was very, very pessimistic because of my picture of what such a structure would look like. But I'm very pleasantly surprised with what I see. It's out of the box, it's innovative. That term was used. And I think it's worth a try to do that. When we talk about what's going in there, we talk about families. Now, I already asked the question, what if you can't get the families? Well, okay, then it'll change. It will be other than, or the artists, I ask you, what if you can't get enough artists and stuff? Well, they'll fill it with people that are not artists, whatever. And I know it says families, but what if 3 ladies that are artists got together and took a 3-bedroom and each one had a bedroom? Is that possible? No kids, which is a benefit, but you have 3 artists where they can pool their income to live in such a structure and do the work on campus. So I think there's possibilities there to do that. I know we have a lot to do yet on this. I know you couldn't do this kind of a structure without eliminating those 2 apartments. There's just no way you're going to be able to get in the parking and everything else. You can't skirt around it. You have to level it and start from scratch. I'm glad to see the parking's contained within. It's similar to what the Americana and Rick Caruso did. You can't see the parking of the Americana. It's hidden. I guess that's the going wave nowadays. I assume on Kenwood that the first level will have stoops where the people walk up. That's always good for security. The last thing you want is people walking by and looking right in the window at your living room. Let's see what else I want to say. You've heard the term of starving artists. I guess a lot of artists and starving musicians, because there's a lot of steady work, that fits for them going in here. It'll be an interesting thing to see how this develops out. I hope it looks like market rate housing with innovative design. I think I asked the question about the SRO and the other buildings which are not involved in this, but is the landscaping around the buildings going to be upgraded with this project? And I was told they would. So at least some of the outside will look better than it does now. It's been terrible to look at for the last few decades. I think that's about all I have. It is very innovative. I like the mix. I couldn't picture that in my head, but I'm curious to see, since you've had successes in other cities doing this, now Long Beach, what comes out of this. Like I said, I'm more like Mr. Quintero, maybe because we're older, and aren't calling any downtown. Maybe this will work, because it's a combination of factors. I know it's what the Y needs. It's the best of all worlds, the income they'll get, the parking they'll get, and the city gets an innovative try at something new in the city. So, yes, I will support it.
Yes, Mr. Mincy.
Yes, I am very excited about this project. Partly, it's right there at our arts and entertainment district. It's taking care, you talked about the starving artists. I've known some starving artists, and a lot of time they are investing in whatever they're doing. And also, there are a lot of starving artist families. And so the 3-bedroom would certainly be good. Another thing that was mentioned, there's a senior project in Burbank where you're using the help from the seniors to the students and so forth. Then I can certainly see that at the YMCA, where the artists could be helping projects at the Y and vice versa. And the whole concept of artists going, I understand there would be a media center, so not only paintings and so forth, but visual material and film and so forth. There is also in the discussion here youth rooms for children. I know there are no parks right there, but there would be rooms for them to work with artists and so forth. I always appreciate art. I'm not an artist myself. The only thing I can draw are flies, they tell me. But I appreciate art, know art, and I think that this type of project in that area, because we're very fond of the YMCA, and that concept will certainly add to that whole area. So I certainly want to, at least for us to go ahead with the progress.
Thank you, Mr. Mincy. Yes, Mrs. Perazia?
A lot was said. I'm going to be short. I'm going to talk about myself and my family. So I remember when we moved to the U.S. from Armenia in the 90s. So the first place I took my son for his sports activity, that was the Y. So, and I can tell how appreciative is my family. And I don't know, I have a lot to say, but I'll be just supportive of the project. And regarding talking about the project, it's a very nice looking project. And in addition to that, we're having the art gallery in the project. So I'm supportive of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Parazian. Okay. So thank you to all the Housing Authority members for their thoughtful comments. I have some questions and comments also. Now, I'm a big fan of the Y, and not in theory, but in practice. My mother is a member, my daughter's a member, my oldest son's a member, and they're there every day for some type of a sports activity. I do want to stress that I am concerned about the points that Councilman Quintero pointed out, and I hope that the EIR deals with those issues in a substantive and comprehensive manner so that we have a clear picture of what this is really going to mean for that neighborhood and for the residents that end up living there. Question to Mr. Zovak, going back to the issue of the existing tenants. Now, those tenants are in affordable housing units currently? The tenants that will have to be relocated?
I wouldn't qualify the units as necessarily affordable.
Okay, so they're not in low-income housing. They haven't qualified for.
No, it's not an affordable restricted building for the YMCA. They purchased that property independently and
The
operated
rents may be
independently.
inexpensive relative to the market, but they are not affordable housing as we would define it pursuant
Correct.
to a city program.
Okay. I
But
understand.
if we do relocate those tenants pursuant to a city action, then we would have an obligation pending their eligibility to actually provide relocation assistance to inspected, safe, sanitary, and decent housing, as opposed to one of the other projects ongoing now.
And my concern was that if they are currently in some type of affordable housing, I mean, call it what you want, but below the market housing, even if they get the relocation benefits, they may have no choice but to settle for full market rate housing, which sort of disadvantages them.
I'm sure Mr. Zovak can speak to that more completely than I can. It's been a long time since I've relocated tenants through the old redevelopment agencies, but there were different mechanisms that you would employ as part of the relocating agency that would transition residents from one area to another vis-a-vis the economics of their rent. It's no surprise that having a government entity, especially one in California, where the restrictions are very fair to the tenants, it does cost a good deal of money, and that's why it's oftentimes difficult to do for the project economics. But we would have to be doing that as part of this deal.
Right. And this problem would only be compounded if elderly individuals or families are involved.
Most certainly. We'd have to take an inventory. We would likely employ a professional relocation firm to handle those relocations for us, understanding that we will be paying the full freight for it.
Right, especially in light of 12 Oaks and
Most
the conversation
definitely, sir.
that just took place, the shortage of affordable housing, I guess.
I suspect it would be a study in contrasts.
Which brings me to my next point. I'll be honest. I'm a little concerned with the fact that the proposed building, the proposal seems to be limited to someone who is somehow going to be qualified as an artist. Even that, I'm trying to imagine how that, it's sort of a subjective standard. Unless, how does one prove that they're an artist?
It's a good question.
That'd be a process that we would discuss with the developer, and if we do come back with a proposal, that would be outlined in there. There's a method that the developer already has in establishing artists. They set up in the past, their experience has been to set up interview panels in which the interview panel consists of artists. They will then interview prospective tenants, talk to them about their art, question them about their art, do they exhibit it, what type of art it is, ask them to show it to them, and talk about how long they've been doing it. And so they've done it enough times that they have this procedure in place to be able to identify, is it truly an artist or someone just saying that for the sake of trying to secure the priority.
Okay. So,
and I should clarify, if and this would be part of the future negotiations, there is that preference for artists, but if the preference, if there is not enough artists applying with that preference, then it does default to regular income qualifying households.
And the artists don't have to be from Glendale, or at least in generally close proximity to Glendale. They can apply from Colorado.
It's a question we would bring up and ask in the negotiation process.
Again, because
as to what's allowed.
And that's the fundamental problem I have with this is, we have a long line of people waiting for some type of affordable housing, and they're actually currently Glendale residents. I mean, I would think we have some kind of a fiduciary obligation to them to take care of them first. And again, I love the arts, I support the arts, but to ban, just to, categorically exclude everyone who can't qualify as an artist seems like a feast during famine. Anyway, I'm really concerned about that.
It would probably end up being a points system where the more points you accumulate, the more apt you are to get the unit. But just because you aren't of that particular subset, it wouldn't exclude you from it.
Okay. And I actually agree with Councilman Friedman that an expansive definition of artist, I think, is better, because then we're not sort of creating an artificial void or an artificial shortage of people who would locally qualify for these units, and then we have to open it up to everyone else in the universe just so that that narrow niche is filled by that that specific type of artist that's okay, and not the other types. But having said that, I really like the design. I think it looks great. I think if the EIR issues are resolved properly, this is a good project, and I support it.
Move the item.
Second.
I would like to have the Y, or whoever's managing those properties, at least get us a survey of the tenants, just a ballpark figure of what we're talking about. Are they mostly single people, married? Are there children there, seniors? Just to get an idea of who the tenants are.
Is that okay? Can we have that done? Thank you. So we have a motion and a second.
Second, yeah.
Roll call, please.
Authority members: Friedman?
Yes.
Incy?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Brazian?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Weaver?
Yes.
Chair Sinania?
Yes.
You're not Weaver yet.
Yes, I'm not. I'm not. That's correct.
Weaver, yes, and Chair Sinania,
Yes.
Thank you. Next item is any authority member or staff comments.
And we have no comments at this
Move
time.
we adjourn for the Housing Authority.
Second?
And we are adjourned at 4:35.